My name is Jennifer Miller, 22 years old, and just a few days away from my graduation ceremony at a prestigious university in New York. I had waited for this moment for 4 years, imagining my parents sitting proudly in the audience, clapping as I walked across the stage to receive my honors degree. But everything shattered with one short phone call. That evening, when I called to discuss transportation, my father's cold voice came through the phone. Jennifer, your mom and I won't be able to take you to the ceremony. I froze, my heart sinking. What do you mean? Isn't that the most important day of my life? He cut me off immediately, without hesitation. You can take the bus. We're busy with something else. What could possibly be more important than my graduation? I asked, my voice trembling. A short silence, then he answered clearly, We just bought Emily a brand new Tesla. She just graduated high school. You know that. My ears rang. Emily, my 18-year-old sister, had only finished high school. Yet my parents poured all their attention and money into her, even as I was about to step into the world with outstanding achievements. I bit my lip, forcing myself to stay calm. I've worked for years to reach this day. Do you really think a car matters more than that? My mom chimed in, her voice sweet but distant. Jennifer, you're the strong one. We never have to worry about you. Emily needs encouragement, and the car is a well-deserved reward. Her words hit me like a verdict. To my parents, my independence and success were nothing more than excuses to neglect me. I heard myself let out a dry, bitter laugh. So this is how you show pride? Leaving me alone to ride a cheap bus while driving Emily around in her shiny new Tesla? No one replied. Just a sigh before the line went dead. The phone slipped from my hand, my fingers trembling with anger and humiliation. I sat frozen in my tiny dorm room, picturing my sister being hugged and celebrated, while I would have to manage on my own to attend the most important day of my life. I remembered the countless times before when they had given similar excuses. When I earned a full scholarship, they only said, Good, you've always been smart. But when Emily won a consolation prize in a small competition, they threw a big party. The disparity repeated itself again and again, and today was the peak of it all. I looked at the graduation gown and cap neatly hanging on my chair, my chest tightening. I had studied day and night, worked endless jobs to cover my expenses, and fought for every step just for this moment. Yet my parents dismissed it so easily they wouldn't even bother to show up. The phone lit up again, a text from Emily. Don't be mad at Mom and Dad. I promise I'll take you out in the new Tesla after your graduation. I stared at the words, my lips trembling. While I was preparing to walk into a formal ceremony in my worn-out shoes, my sister was giddy over her luxury gift. A chill ran down my spine. I realized that, in this family, my efforts had never been enough. I sat silently for a long while, then closed my eyes and drew in a deep breath. If my parents wanted me to take the bus, then I would. Since childhood, I had felt the imbalance in my family. I was born in a quiet town in Vermont. My father, Thomas Miller, was a lawyer at a major firm in Boston. My mother, Linda, managed a medical center. Both were respected in the community, but inside our three-story wooden house, the scales of affection were never equal. I remember my 7th birthday clearly. I received a brown school backpack, sturdy and practical, but hardly exciting for a child. 2 months later, on Emily's 3rd birthday, our backyard was filled with balloons, a small circus troupe performed, and a pony was brought in for her to ride while relatives cheered. I sat off to the side, clutching my backpack, telling myself that she was younger and needed more attention. But deep inside, the distance had already begun. Family vacations told the same story. When I was 10, I begged to attend a science camp in New Hampshire. But because Emily wanted Disney World, the entire family plan shifted instantly. My mother patted my head and said, Maybe next year, Jenny. That next year never came. Even when I started excelling academically, nothing changed. Teachers praised me so often at parent meetings, yet my parents' reactions were dismissive. My father would nod, saying, "Good, that's your responsibility." Meanwhile, Emily brought home a report card full of C's, and my mother would embrace her, exclaiming, "You did your best. I'm so proud of you." I stood beside them, cold and hollow. The breaking point came when Emily turned 16. My father bought her a bright red BMW, claiming she needed a comfortable car for school. When I, already in college, asked him to help with part of the cost of an old Honda, he flatly said, "You can work and save up. Don't expect too much." I stayed silent, but inside I felt abandoned to the core. Dinner tables weren't much different. Emily would talk about being chosen to dance in the school festival, and the family erupted in applause. I shared that I had been selected as editor for the college newspaper, and all I got was a curt, "Good, keep it up." The room filled with laughter for her, while I learned to swallow my feelings quietly. For years, I tried to comfort myself, thinking maybe my parents simply wanted me to be strong to grow up faster. But the older I grew, the clearer it became. It wasn't just favoring the younger child, it was outright favoritism. Emily was used to having every wish fulfilled, while I was used to not being heard. One evening when I was 17, I won first place in a statewide debate competition. I rushed home, eager to share the joy, yet the house was buzzing with preparations for Emily's celebration. She had just been accepted to the cheerleading squad. There were cakes, confetti, and neighbors filling the rooms. Holding my certificate, I realized no one cared. My mother glanced at it and said, "That's great, honey. Leave it there. I'll look tomorrow." That night, I hung the certificate on my bedroom wall and promised myself that one day I would achieve something impossible for them to ignore. Emily was never malicious. She simply enjoyed what was handed to her, but her carefree entitlement cut into me like a blade. She lived shielded, while I braced myself against every storm. Slowly, determination hardened within me. If I couldn't win their love, I would earn recognition in my own way. I poured myself into studies, always ranking first, always joining every competition. But the higher I climbed, the wider the distance grew between me and my parents. They never saw the effort, they only repeated that I didn't need anyone's help. Meanwhile, Emily had everything: designer clothes, lavish vacations, things I only heard about secondhand. That favoritism shaped two very different people under one roof. Emily, the pampered princess, and me, the daughter who seemed strong but was only holding herself together to avoid collapsing. So when I finally walked out of the Miller house to face my future, I carried not just the luggage of a college student, but also the wounds of an unjust childhood. I still remember my high school years vividly, the time when I believed that if I tried hard enough, my parents would one day acknowledge me. But the harder I worked, the clearer the cruel truth became. My accomplishments never weighed as much in their eyes as Emily's smile. At 15, I was the only student in my grade to earn perfect scores in math and literature. The principal even called my name during assembly, praising me as a model student. I rushed home with my transcript, hoping my parents would be proud. My father only glanced at it and said, "Good, that's what we expect from you." No hug, no real praise. Meanwhile, that very same day, Emily came home with a C+, and the whole family applauded. My mother hugged her, saying, "You've improved from last time. I'm so proud of you." I sat at the dinner table, holding back a sigh, my heart hollow. At 16, I joined the debate team and helped us win the state championship. My speech was even published in the local paper. I brought the newspaper home, hoping my mother would save it as a keepsake. Instead, she folded it neatly, set it aside, and immediately shifted the conversation to Emily's new prom dress. That night, the dinner table was filled only with talk about what Emily would wear to the spring dance. I felt invisible in my own home. The breaking point came during senior year. I was elected editor-in-chief of the school newspaper and captain of the science team. Night after night, I stayed up nearly until dawn, finishing research papers and preparing for nationals. When my name was announced as the top winner, I cried right on stage. In that moment, I thought, this time, surely they'll be proud. But when I got home, my dad was glued to the TV, and my mom was busy setting up a small party because Emily had just been chosen as head cheerleader. I handed my mom the shining trophy. She gave me a distracted smile. That's nice, honey. Put it on the shelf. Now help me with this cake. I placed the trophy quietly on the shelf, my chest full of bitterness. Emily never did it intentionally. She was simply carefree, sharing stories from school and little things about her friends. But every time she smiled, my parents showered her with praise. No matter how many awards I brought home, all I ever got were empty words. That's what we expect from you. To them, my effort was duty, never joy. Slowly, I realized the gap between me and my family was widening. At school, teachers saw me as a source of pride. Friends sought me out for academic advice. But once I walked through my front door, I was just the child we don't need to worry about, a shadow next to the pampered youngest daughter. I once overheard my mom whisper to a neighbor, "Emily needs more encouragement. Jennifer is different, she's already strong and knows how to handle herself." That's when it hit me. My so-called strength was the very reason they abandoned me. On honors night, I was awarded valedictorian. I stood on stage, scanning the rows of parents' seats, only to see the one reserved for my family completely empty. Later, I was told simply, "It clashed with Emily's school play. You understand, right?" I forced a smile, but inside it felt like a knife twisting deeper. From then on, I stopped expecting. I learned to smile when they praised Emily, to swallow my tears when my achievements were brushed aside. But deep within me, I nurtured a promise. One day, I would accomplish something so great that the whole world would have to notice, so that no one could ever ignore Jennifer Miller again. The day I received my acceptance letter to Columbia University in New York, my heart nearly burst with joy. 4 years of grinding, studying day and night, had finally led me to my dream. I ran home, holding up the letter, hoping to see pride in my parents' eyes. But my father only gave a slight nod, and my mother said, "Good, at least you won't embarrass us." Emily, at 18, hadn't even decided on a major yet, but she had already been promised a new car for motivation. As for me, there was no offer of help at all. I understood then everything from that point forward I would handle myself. I refused to beg for a single dollar from them. So the summer before college, I started working 3 jobs. Mornings serving coffee at a small cafe, afternoons as an assistant at a law office, and evenings tutoring high school students in math. I worked myself to exhaustion, but every time I counted the money I saved, I told myself, "Jennifer, this is your future. No one can take it from you." When I left Vermont for New York, I had only 2 old suitcases and a heart full of determination. I didn't ask my parents to drive me. I bought a bus ticket myself. Before I walked out the door, my mother asked indifferently, "Do you have enough money to get by?" I nodded. "I'm prepared." My father glanced over his newspaper and muttered, "Don't waste money on frivolous things." That was the entirety of my send-off. No hug, no tears. I carried my bags to the bus, feeling like I had just buried my childhood in that house. Dorm life at Columbia was grueling. My scholarship covered part of tuition, but room, books, and food were on me. By day, I worked shifts at the campus library. Between classes, I delivered food to customers. On weekends, I was a sales clerk at a clothing store on Broadway. On freezing winter nights, I pedaled my bike through the streets with numb fingers, trying to smile when handing food to strangers. There were nights I collapsed on my bed, too exhausted to eat. Dinner was often instant noodles or discounted sandwiches. I clipped coupons, hunted for free campus events just to get an extra meal. But I didn't feel ashamed. On the contrary, I felt alive living on my own terms, not my parents' money. During those uncertain days, I met Rachel Lopez, a fellow economics major. Rachel came from Texas, the daughter of a single mom who worked as a nurse. She also worked part-time to make ends meet, so she understood my struggle completely. We quickly became each other's support system. When I couldn't afford a textbook, Rachel chipped in half so we could share. When I missed a work shift and had no time to cook, she shared her pot of soup made from cheap vegetables bought at the market. We laughed through the hardship, and it made things lighter. One winter night, as we studied together, in the dorm, Rachel asked, "Jen, why don't your parents help at all? They clearly can afford it." I gave a bitter smile and shook my head. "They believe I can handle it myself." Rachel was quiet for a moment, then said sharply, "That's not independence, Jen. That's neglect." Her words pierced me like a blade. It was the first time someone had named what I'd always avoided. My parents weren't testing me, they had abandoned me. From then on, I threw myself deeper into work and study. I joined the school's investment club, analyzing the stock market with other students. I spent every spare hour reading finance books, practicing how to write reports like a professional. Each time I earned an A, I thought, if they don't see it, the world will. During holiday breaks, while most classmates went home, I stayed in the city to pick up extra shifts. I once stood 10 hours straight in a crowded clothing store during Christmas, sweat running down my back as I smiled at every customer. That Christmas night, I returned to my dorm and called home. My mom answered, her voice cheerful. "We're having dinner with relatives. Emily just made a wonderful dessert. Everyone's praising her." I was silent for a few seconds, then said, "I won't keep you." Hanging up, I sat in my dim room under the harsh neon light. But I no longer felt empty. I had grown used to surviving on my own. Those years, though harsh, forged my will like steel. I learned how to stretch every dollar, how to stand tall in a vast city, and most importantly, how to find strength within myself. I had grown used to living in a relentless routine. Mornings at the library, afternoons delivering food, evenings crammed into packed lecture halls, and nights buried in books. I thought my life would only revolve around assignments and meager paychecks until one fateful day in my sophomore year at Columbia. That day, I turned in a paper for Modern Financial Markets, taught by Professor Arthur Bennett. The assignment asked for an analysis of changing spending habits among young Americans. After 3 sleepless nights of crunching numbers, I submitted over 20 pages of analysis, including a small, risky section where I proposed using technology to replace traditional payment methods. When he returned my paper, he didn't just give me an A, he added a note: "Stay after class." My heart pounded as I stood outside his office, convinced I had made some mistake. But when I stepped inside, Professor Bennett sat behind his large wooden desk, tapping my paper lightly. "Jennifer, do you realize your essay doesn't resemble any other student's?" I stammered. "Sir, I just wrote down what I observed." He smiled. "You touched on a problem the entire finance industry is struggling with. Digital payment systems are full of gaps. Your idea, if developed, could change the market." I was stunned. Never in my life had anyone spoken to me like that. For years, all I had heard was, "You need to do better," or "That's your responsibility." No one had ever looked at me as someone with real potential. From that day forward, Professor Bennett became my mentor. He didn't just assign me more reading, he also introduced me to fintech conferences. I remember the first time I accompanied him to a talk on Wall Street, where experts debated the future of cryptocurrency. I sat quietly in the back, both nervous and exhilarated. A thought flashed through my mind. If I could create a safe, user-friendly platform, could it help millions? On the way back, as though he had read my thoughts, he asked, "Jennifer, have you ever considered starting a business?" I laughed, thinking he was joking. "Professor, I'm barely affording rent." Starting a business sounds impossible. He shook his head. Plenty of big companies started in dorm rooms. What matters isn't how much money you have, it's whether you dare to try. His words haunted me for weeks. I began spending every spare moment in the library reading about blockchain, data encryption, and financial cyber attacks. The more I read, the more convinced I became that I could find a new path. One night, while working my retail shift, I grabbed a scrap of paper and scribbled down an idea, an app that could encrypt transactions at the very first step, reducing processing time while keeping security airtight. I gave the project a temporary name, Safe Transact. I told Rachel, my closest friend who had stuck by me through all the struggles. Her eyes widened. Jen, are you serious? Completely serious. If I can code a prototype and test it on a small scale, maybe it could become real. Rachel squeezed my hand. If you're in, I'm in. I'll support you all the way. From then on, we turned our cramped dorm room into our first office. I sat for hours in front of my old laptop, writing lines of code, trying to link data. Rachel handled market research and drafted reports. Whenever I felt like giving up, she slid a cheap cup of coffee my way and said, "Keep going, Jen. I believe in you." Professor Bennett didn't let me off easy either. He regularly checked my progress, asking tough questions that kept me up at night. He never gave me shortcuts, but his tough guidance sharpened my vision. Once, he invited me to his home to meet some of his old colleagues, experts who had worked at major banks. I sat quietly, scribbling notes as they debated. When I shyly shared my idea for Safe Transact, I braced myself for laughter. Instead, one of them nodded. This girl has a unique perspective. If she can solve the speed issue, this could be the foundation of the future. On the way back, I nearly cried. My entire childhood, I'd been dismissed. Yet now, real professionals were recognizing my potential. From that moment, I knew there was no turning back. Safe Transact could no longer remain just an idea. It had to become a real project. And I, Jennifer Miller, would make it happen, no matter how rough the road ahead. Starting in my junior year, I officially threw myself into the startup journey. Safe Transact was no longer just an idea on paper. Thanks to Professor Bennett's introduction, I had the chance to pitch my concept at a campus startup competition. The demo was still rough, but I put my whole heart into defending it. The result? I won first place and received $40,000 in funding, along with a spot in the university's business incubator. For me, it felt like a dream opening the door to a new life. I rented a tiny room near campus, big enough for 4 desks and a few plastic chairs. That became our first office. I recruited 2 computer science students, Ethan and Lucas, to help build the software, while Rachel handled admin work and market research. We worked from morning until late at night. The lights in that little room almost never went off. The early days were full of struggles. We had little money and almost no experience. Within months, the prize money was nearly gone. Sometimes our lunch was just cheap sandwiches, and dinner was instant noodles cooked in a small pot. But no one complained. On the contrary, I saw in their eyes a fierce determination. It was either success or total failure. The biggest blow came when Ethan suddenly quit. He had received an internship offer from a major tech firm with a much higher paycheck. I didn't blame him, but his departure stalled our project. Lucas and I had to split the work and rewrite nearly half the core code. There were days I slept less than 2 hours, staring at the screen until my eyes burned. Rachel saw me breaking down, pressed a coffee into my hand, and said, "Jen, you can't carry this alone, but you can't give up either." Just when it felt like we were collapsing, luck arrived. A small demo at the incubator caught the eye of Mark Davis, an angel investor who had made his fortune in banking technology. After my pitch, he looked at me intently and said, "I'll invest $300,000 for 15% equity, but I want to see a finished product within 6 months." It was a huge opportunity, but also terrifying pressure. The next 6 months were the harshest of my life. We practically lived in that office. Lucas set alarms every 2 hours to check the test servers. Rachel picked up side gigs to keep our funds from drying up. I juggled classes and running the company some days, sprinting straight from lecture halls to meetings without pause. The most intense moment came when we discovered a severe security flaw. Without fixing it, the entire idea could collapse. Lucas and I had to rewrite nearly 40% of the code. I remember that night clearly. Rain hammering against the window, my hands trembling from exhaustion as I typed. Yet I still told the team, if we don't pull through this, Safe Transact will never exist. We fight to the end. In the end, we did it. The beta version of Safe Transact processed transactions 25% faster than existing platforms, with security experts praising its safeguards. Mark Davis kept his promise, opening doors for us to meet major venture capital firms in New York. A month later, I stood in a sleek boardroom high above the city, pitching to investors. My palms were sweating, but my voice was steady. When I finished, the room was silent for a few seconds before erupting in applause. One major firm offered $20 million in our first funding round, valuing the company at $150 million. I could hardly believe my ears. From broke students living on instant noodles, we had become the CEO and team of a multi-million-dollar startup. A few years later, Safe Transact had millions of users. Our valuation skyrocketed past $1.2 billion by the time I turned 22. The media called me the youngest self-made female billionaire in New York. But above every title, I remembered one thing. Jennifer Miller, had proven that even when my family abandoned me, I could still build an empire from nothing. And this was only the beginning. The day of graduation finally arrived. The May sky over New York was bright blue, sunlight spilling across Columbia University's campus more brilliantly than ever. I slipped into my deep blue gown, adjusted my cap carefully in front of the mirror. What filled my chest wasn't just joy, but also the heavy echo of my father's words days earlier telling me to take the bus, because he and my mother were too busy throwing a party for Emily's new Tesla. I chose to honor their decision. Early that morning, I boarded a crowded city bus, sitting by the window as familiar streets rolled past. Part of me wanted to cry, but another part almost laughed. They truly had no idea that the daughter they'd dismissed all these years was now the CEO of a billion-dollar company. When I stepped onto campus, the air buzzed with celebration. Hundreds of families posed for photos, handed bouquets to their graduates. I walked quietly to the student section, reminding myself that I was used to being alone. Still, deep down, I wondered if someone from my family might surprise me by showing up. The announcer took the stage, calling names one by one to applause. My heart pounded until I heard Jennifer Miller, graduating valedictorian in financial economics. I rose, climbed the stage amid a wave of clapping. Dean Carter handed me my diploma, then unexpectedly held onto the microphone. And today, we have special news. Student Jennifer Miller not only graduates with top honors, but has also been named by Forbes as one of the youngest self-made female billionaires in America. Her company, Safe Transact, has just crossed a $1 billion valuation. The auditorium erupted, gasps, cheers, camera flashes bursting like fireworks. I drew a deep breath, standing tall under their astonished eyes. In the third row, I spotted them, my parents and Emily. They had come, despite insisting they wouldn't. Their faces were frozen, eyes wide in disbelief. My father dropped his program, my mother covered her mouth, and Emily sat stunned, her phone slipping from her hand. Taking the mic for my speech, I glanced their way. A strange tide swelled inside me, bitterness laced with triumph. For years, I had craved their recognition, but at this moment, it no longer mattered. I spoke about my journey, juggling 3 jobs to survive, sleepless nights coding Safe Transact, the mentors and friends who believed in me. I didn't mention my parents, nor did I blame them. Instead, I said simply, success doesn't come from favoritism, but from resilience. We are strongest when forced to stand on our own. The entire hall rose in applause. I saw Rachel in the front row, tears streaking her face, and Professor Bennett beaming with pride. My parents, however, sat rigid, eyes sharp with calculation. Columbia's campus after the ceremony was overflowing with laughter, flashing cameras, and bright bouquets being passed around. Just as I stepped off stage, my parents and Emily came toward me. Their faces glowed with a strange pride, but behind it I saw calculation. These were no longer the same people who had coldly told me to just take the bus. They were suddenly the proud Millers, eager to bask in the spotlight I had created. My father clapped me on the shoulder, his voice heavy with implication. Jennifer, I'm truly impressed with what you've accomplished. We should talk seriously about managing Safe Transact. I can help you scale faster. My mother slid in, clasping my hand. Our family finally has a reason to be admired. You need to let us stand beside you as your solid foundation. I gently pulled my hand back. My voice was calm but firm. Thank you, but I don't need that. Safe Transact has its own team and financial advisors. What I hoped for today was a simple congratulations from you, not a plan to insert yourselves into my success. The air grew tense. Emily stood beside them, eyes down, clutching her phone tightly. For the first time, she didn't look cheerful or smug. She whispered, I truly didn't know you did all this alone. I'm sorry for always being the one favored. Her words froze me. Never before had Emily admitted anything. When I met her eyes, I saw sincerity and unease. Maybe she too had been trapped by our parents' favoritism, placed on a pedestal, never recognized as her own person. I nodded slightly. It's not your fault. We both grew up in the mold they created. But starting today, I'm writing my own story. Rachel appeared from behind, handing me a large bouquet, her smile radiant. Jen, the team, and Professor Bennett are waiting at the hotel for your party. I turned back to my parents. I'm going with the people who have truly stood by me these past 4 years. They are the family I choose. My father's face darkened, his tone sharp. You can't turn your back on your parents. After all, we are still family. I drew a deep breath, answering firmly. Family isn't just blood. Family is where there's respect and real love. If you want to be in my life, you'll have to accept that. I turned and walked away, leaving their stunned faces behind. Emily hesitated for a few seconds, then hurried after me. Jen, can I come too? I want to know what it feels like to be with people who truly believe in me. I gave her a rare smile. Of course, Emily. That night's party at the Charles Hotel was filled with cheers. Rachel raised a glass. Professor Bennett looked at me with pride, and the whole Safe Transact team chanted my name as a tribute. Emily sat quietly observing, then suddenly laughed. I've never seen you this happy. Maybe you've found where you belong all along. I nodded. Yes. For years, I had chased after my parents' empty approval, but the real strength had always been with the people who never abandoned me, who treated me as one of their own without conditions. From that night, I set firm boundaries. I didn't cut my parents off completely, but I didn't allow them to interfere in Safe Transact or dictate my life. I kept only minimal contact, focusing instead on work, friends, and relationships that truly mattered. With Emily, things began to change. No longer the bitter older sister watching her indulge. No longer the arrogant younger sibling who didn't understand. We started talking as equals, learning to heal old wounds. Standing on the hotel rooftop that night, looking over the glittering city lights, I knew this with certainty. Jennifer Miller had reclaimed herself. I no longer needed my parents' recognition. I already had a real family, the people who chose to stay, who shared the struggles and the triumphs. And most importantly, I had proven my worth in a way no one could deny. Jennifer's story reflects a reality many still face: growing up overlooked, fighting twice as hard only to be valued less. Yet, those very struggles forged her resilience, the strength to stand tall on her own. In real life, countless young people have chosen independence, building careers from nothing, proving that true worth isn't handed down by family praise but earned through inner strength and persistence. Real success isn't about revenge against the past, it's about showing the world you deserve respect. What do you think about Jennifer's journey from being overlooked to proving her true value? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt and dramatic family stories.